Thank you for tuning into Growing Tech Fast, the condensed podcast in which conversations about growing SaaS startups are had with those who have grown them. Today, I'm joined by Chris Hull. Chris is the co-founder and chief product officer at Otus, the first edtech platform to centralize learning management, assessment, and data for educators, students, and families. Chris was named in the National School Board Association's 20 to Watch EdTech Leaders. If that wasn't enough, he's also spent 11 years teaching social studies to the 7th grade. Pleasure to have you on, Chris. How's it going?
Going well. Excited to be here. Excited to have this conversation and excited to be part of this.
Fantastic, fantastic. So, giving you the elevator pitch, Chris, do you want to start off by telling us a little bit more about yourself, the work you guys are doing at Otus?
Yeah, for sure. So as you mentioned, I was a social studies teacher for 11 years, back all the way. It seems over a decade ago, which is even hard to imagine. In 2010, I was lucky enough to help co-author a grant that brought one device to every kid. And when we went one-to-one, we originally thought it was going to be with devices that were about to be thrown out, 2002, 2003 Indigo Max. We took the grant writing process a little probably too seriously, my colleague and I, and we ended up getting first generation iPads. And it was really an eye-opening experience for me because I was very naive. I've learned in my life that I'm more naive than I realize. I also have 4 kids. I was very naive about being a parent. When we had twins, I was naive about having twins. It just is constant in my life that I'm a little naive. I think things are going to work out really well, and I just jump in. So when we went one-to-one back in 2010, I thought this was going to be the panacea of everything. I thought I was entering the dream world of teaching. I really loved being able to connect with my students. I thought going one-to-one was going to be just incredible. And what ended up happening was it really exposed inefficiencies and pain points that existed in education. And so what quickly became apparent was that there wasn't this unified system to help you teach, grade, analyze, and then plan what to do next. I've learned later, as Otus has grown and become, as I've helped out the delivery team, I've learned all about how this works on the delivery side of the house, where it's like you build, measure, iterate, and then build again. And it's like you get into this infinity loop, this infinity cycle. If you talk about lean startup and things like that, that's how education works. You want to have teaching moments. You then want to have grading moments. Grading is like the word that people don't like. As a teacher, I don't think anybody loves to grade. There are some who do, but it's an essential part of knowing where a kid's at. So after you've taught them, after you've measured where they are now, you then want to analyze what needs to happen, and then you plan what to do next to maximize learning. And what we really want to do is we want to be the best data collection, the best information collection system we can be, by giving the tools to help you teach, to help you grade, so that you can analyze a more comprehensive profile and then plan what to do next. And we want to shrink the time it takes to get through that cycle, so that infinity loop becomes faster, so that we're not waiting until the end of the year or the midterm or the final. No, this is something that happens daily or every few days. And we're not doing tests that everybody cringes at, multiple choice. These could be observations. These could be just things students submit. Hey, this is what I'm thinking. It could be a video. We want to be really adaptive. And it's really exciting. I've really spent the time. We founded Otus in 2013, really as a proof of concept for 2013 to 2015 was really focused on the teacher and the student. We then had our COO, Keith, join us, Keith Westman, and he really helped us expand to understand what do admins need. And then really in 2018, which is, you think about it, 5 years, we were really fortunate to be able to build, gain steam, gain traction. We really began to sell in 2018, and now it's been a blur from 2018 till today. We're in over 160 plus districts. We're growing super fast. Sadly, the pandemic has impacted everybody. It turned education on its head. So we've also been dealing with the curveballs thrown to us there. And it's really been interesting growing a SaaS company during these times. And I could go on for a while. As you can tell, I'm a history teacher. Sometimes I'm just up here talking about X, Y, and Z. So I'm excited to kind of dive into some of these with you today, George.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, going back to the origin there, what were some of the challenges you faced early on, Chris, when you were sort of first developing Otus itself and going from there?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest challenges, and as I talked to some of my colleagues just in the startup world, it's apparent that I'm not alone, and this is not only true for ed tech, but one of the things that became apparent was you could all of a sudden add more and more features and functionality that you wanted to do. The MVP of what we hope to achieve kind of kept on growing in scope. And there are a lot of education technology tools that address a single pain point, the ability to communicate with parents or the ability to see what's happening in your classroom. But we wanted something more comprehensive. We really sought out to have this comprehensive profile of a kid. So we wanted to understand, what is their behavior like? What's their attendance like? What are their interests? What are their passions? What is their in-class in-class assessments? What are their district benchmark assessments? What are their national assessments? We want to put all of this together. What is their history in the system? Have they experienced trauma, or did they have a great third grade year but then struggled with something in fourth grade? Like, we want to be able to create something that's more comprehensive and complete, so that we can really have all stakeholders, families, all educators, the student themselves, really be on the same page of information. And so the more we dug into that, this simple idea, which maybe it doesn't sound quite as simple, hopefully I'm making it sound simple for the audience, but this idea of knowing kids better. If we think about who our best teachers are, it's the teachers who knew us, who got us, who understood us. And with that information, we can then create more individualized or more personalized plans and situations for that student to thrive and succeed. And then if we're able to fast track that, so it's easier for a teacher to learn their new students. Every teacher gets it. It's possible, but sometimes the information wasn't present. Maybe if I'm a fifth grade teacher, the third grade teacher knew something, well, it's lost in that third grade teacher's head. If we're able to capture that in a place, it could be really able to jumpstart that. So while we want to be able to create this comprehensive profile to maximize learning, and we're having tools that help you teach, grade, analyze, and plan, the tools that are needed to do that could really be very broad. And so one of the things that was a struggle is, where do we start? How do we make this happen gradually? How do we build out an MVP? So that's where we really looked at our stakeholders. So we started with our teachers and our students, and let's focus on this relationship. And let's not worry. Again, we like data, we like information. Data visualization is really important. I think we do an amazing job at that. That came later. So we focus first on this data collection, and data can be a four-letter word to some people. It sometimes can be off-putting. It's like, I don't want my kid to be a data point. No, it's not a data point. It's a collection of information. So we really started with that teacher and student interaction. And so that was a challenge, because I sometimes, my heads are in the clouds, I'm looking down, and it's like, man, I can see all of this potential, but being consistent, being sure we do that, and taking the time to constantly listen to feedback and iterate is a core tenet of Otus. And so we needed to have that time, and we were fortunate. It's something that I know a lot of companies don't get. Our other co-founder, Andy Bloom, he really enabled us, because he saw the vision. He enabled us to take that time to, hey, let's start with an MVP, but know that we're going to have to kind of gradually build on that before it's even going to be really viable for the market. And that's why it took us from, it was the 2013-14 year, we used in a couple classrooms. We figured out that teacher-student relationship, and that's where we started. And it took us a couple years. And then we added the admin relationship, and they want to see aggregate information. They want to be able to see everything boil up. Well, how do they want that to happen? How do we ensure the connection's working? Yeah, I could go on and on. There have been many challenges. I've had many lessons learned. As I said, there are many moments I've been a little naive about how things should work.
Yeah, I mean, are there any sort of main mistakes you made there or learned from throughout?
Yeah, so one of the biggest mistakes that I think I made, and it's something that I put my ideals of what is like the best practice for something, And one of the things we wanted to do is like, we've tried to balance like promotion of best practices in education with being effective and efficient. We want it to be an efficiency platform because teachers have so much on their plate, educators have so much on their plate, and so much of it doesn't even relate to the teaching and learning that should be the primary concern of what's happening. And so one of the things I made a mistake on, and the mistake has haunted me to this day, because it was something that was a core tenet that I didn't actually realize was a mistake at the beginning. It actually took several years to find it out, was this idea of transparency. I really believe that transparency can lead to amazing things. You know, at Otus, in terms of our internal employees, we really work to be transparent. We want people to know, what is our mission? What is our vision? What are we working on? What is a project status? And we want that to be done in real time. I don't want people to have to wait for some type of message. I want them to be able to see it. Now, there will be messages because you have to communicate things more than once, but I really believe personally in transparency. And one of the things that I have found is that transparency in education often needs to have kind of a layered approach. You need to be able to turn something on or off, or have a delay. If I'm a teacher, and again, I kind of live by the fly, you know, I just fly by the seat of my pants, so to speak. And the idea is like, I just want to say, you give me the information, we'll get into a conversation, we'll figure it out. I don't know all the answers, but as I've talked to teachers and I've talked to administrators, that's not always fair. I think that if you're giving the teacher this information, so if a student has taken an assessment, if a student is in the midst of a project, if the student is all of a sudden like, we're collecting 8 data points, but we only have 3 of them yet, we need the teachers to be able to analyze and evaluate those alongside, and maybe in a little bit of advance of the families. Because all of a sudden, if I had 150 students, I would be grading, I'd be knowing, but sometimes to take a step back and say, hey, where are we? That's hard to do. That takes like time. And if I'm in the midst of a day where I have 150 students, I'm grading everything, Otus allows that to be way more effective, way more efficient. All of a sudden, we're able to capture way more data points. We need to sometimes be able to say, hey, families, they'll see this tomorrow versus today. Or how do we do that? Now, some districts are like, no, let's do it live. But it is that transition to, wait a minute, it used to be on my clipboard. I used to update it into the old system every Friday. Now it's live. So if I graded at 12:05 in 30 seconds, it's like the family could see it, the student can see it. So we've had to understand that this transparency does require some levers and levels of being able to, hey, let's roll this out a little slower to this group. Let's be able to do that. The other challenge, just because it kind of got me thinking about it, is Otus is a lot. You know, even hearing me, probably I'm here talking too fast, probably. But the idea is,
not at all.
Teaching is hard. Grading is hard. Analyzing comprehensive information is hard. Planning, the idea of progress monitoring. This is a feature that's really going to complete our 4 pillars of Otus. It's something that really, it's comprehensive, but you need to start somewhere. And one of the things I've kind of have to, again, as I said, I jump in with 2 feet, I fly by the seat of my pants. I'm like, bring it on. I just like am craving this information, but we have to meet people where they are. And I think because teachers are the most incredible profession out there. I was a teacher all the way through 2018. So I used Otus for 5 years in my class. It really gave me a little bit of credibility when I would talk for the feedback. Hey, how's it going? I'd be like, oh, well, this is what I did in my classroom today. But I've really learned, you know, through professional development with our districts, with our educators, through conversations. I'm always looking to have conversations. You got to meet people where they are. And that means you have to have an entry point. And sometimes that entry point might be a part of Otus. Maybe we're going to focus on the grading. Let's focus on assessments in Otus. Otus does amazing assessments. Or maybe we want to focus on the data, the analytics. So we're going to bring in some of those national assessments that are already collected, and let's just talk about it. We've really learned that we have to meet people where they are. And so it can be overwhelming. And I've had to learn that. I've had to learn, how do we make it more bite-sized? How do we make it more approachable? How do we make the learning curve steep so that once they're in, it's fast and maybe a lot, but once they're in, they're ready. And each part can kind of give you that opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, really interesting there. Chris, you obviously mentioned you were still working as a teacher for a long time throughout. Could you tell us a little bit about balancing that? I mean, obviously founding a SaaS startup would be too much for a lot of people. So how did you balance those two very demanding professions
Yeah,
there?
so luckily for me, in 2013 and 14, the focus was on the product, and we were able to really be given the runway to say, let's really get into the laboratory, so to speak, and focus on the product. And this is where I was, I think, pretty fortunate, and it's really kind of helped the mindset of Otus. Is our primary objective is to help maximize learning for every kid. We want to level the playing field. We want to be able to help every kid learn better. And we got to meet kids where they are. Some kids are at different levels, and we want to be able to see that. And because of that, I've always seen technology as the tool to help you do the job at hand. So I was teaching, I had 150 kids. I needed a system to do this. I was able to have that voice. So for the first bit, I was really focused on my teaching. And the idea is that use of Otus, by focusing on my teaching, making sure my kids were they able to learn? Were I able to measure their learning, the grading? Were I was able to analyze? Like, I was practicing what we wanted the tool to be able to do. It really informed a lot. In 2015, when Keith came on board, we then started at the admin level. And so I was still focused on that teacher bit. And then I would be able to talk to admins about, hey, what is the data you'd want from someone like me, your teacher? Like, let's put me in those shoes. So it was, again, really symbiotic of what we were trying to achieve. One of the things that did happen is 2017, 2018, which is my last year teaching, my wife, who is a miracle worker, we had twins. So currently I have a 7-year-old, a 5-year-old, and then 3-year-old twins. So in 2018, all of a sudden, I had my daughter was still 3, turning 4. My son was 1, and then my twins were turning 2, and then my twins were born. So it was like that. All of a sudden was like this. Well, I guess my son was 2. Man, when you look back, crazy. People are going to be checking my math. I was not a math teacher, but all of a sudden, at that moment, Otus was beginning to sell. Right, we began selling that year, and it was really 2018, 2019. We were taking off, and I saw the writing on the wall. My twins were born in January, and I was like, man, I'm not going to be able to do right by my students and balance both anymore. And I had to make a choice. And that's really a hard moment. It's a hard moment to come to grips with, because what motivated me and what motivates me to this day is helping kids. And I always thought of myself as a teacher. It's really hard for me to put that in the past tense, because I always identify. It's part of like kind of my identity, but I'm no longer that teacher. And I have to be able to say that, because I would never have been able, I can't even imagine teaching during the pandemic, going remote to hybrid. I still have a lot of friends, a lot of colleagues who are educators. I just have the utmost respect and the empathy and sympathy, just because it's incredible what they've done. And in 2018, I saw the writing on the wall, and it was one of those things, if I'm going to do this the best of my ability, I had to kind of pick. And it was a hard choice. It was one of those choices that I really thought about, long and hard about, because Otus was not only my idea. It was several people's idea. I happen to be a co-founder, not the only one. A lot of the product features aren't even mine. They came from our users. They came from people who were able to share their insights and their expertise. I had to really decide, did I want this idea of Otus to kind of live and grow on its own, and me to stay in the classroom, or did I want to leave the classroom and focus on Otus? And it was really that opportunity that's like a once in a lifetime opportunity, I felt. And I really thought it was a problem I wanted to try to solve. And
yeah,
it's been a journey. 2018, going full time, we had a staff that was pretty small. I'd have to go back and look at the exact I'm a history teacher. I actually have a timeline of everybody. I'd have to go back and look at my notes. But we were at, 10, a dozen or so employees, and we really had that growth after 2018, where we started getting the clients, and all of a sudden we've really grown tremendously since then. We're now over 70 employees. So it's kind of been a blur for me, but I've had a lot to learn, from managing 150 students to helping grow a delivery team, an organization, a company with now 70 employees, trying to make sure we bring the mindset. I want every employee at Otus to be passionate about what we're trying to solve. I want them to understand the mission and the vision. We have almost 40% of our company is former educators. And that idea of, we want everybody to constantly be learning, has really done well by Otus. We have the technologists at Otus. I learn from them every day, and they've been incredible teachers to me, and there are moments I've been able to teach them about the education market. But I think it's that respect of knowing what I know, knowing what others know, and then collaborating to make sure we can solve the problem.
In terms of growing the team there, obviously you guys do have such a clear vision and a clear mission there. I mean, when building a team, is there something that you look for, or a box you tick to know that people share that vision? Or how do you go about that to make sure everyone on the team is on the mission there?
Yeah, I think this is something where culture becomes a really big deal. And I think one of the newer challenges we faced is, with the pandemic, we've actually become a fully remote company. So in 2013, we actually were using, as I mentioned, one of the co-founders, his name's Andy. He was invested in a company that had dev resources in Brazil. So we were lucky enough. Incredible company, Sinvada. They're awesome. We actually have people still helping us from there that they've kind of helped. They've been embedded into our team. We've had 2 developers with us since 2014. So we kind of had this remote relationship in the beginning, right? Because I was teaching. We had a product manager. He works, this guy, amazing guy, he works with us still. His name's Zach. He wore so many hats. It was so interesting at the beginning of, how many hats were you wearing? And, like QA management, all this stuff. And so we had this original kind of remote feel, where our developers were in Brazil. We had Zach and others who were like here in Chicago, but it was kind of like all remote because I was in the classroom. We then transitioned to being mainly a Chicago company while partnering with a couple people. And that really was 2015 to 2018, 19. And then we made another shift. And that really shift was cemented by, our lease went up during the middle of the pandemic. And it's like, hey, we're going fully remote. And it's really caused an interesting situation of, how do you onboard people really effectively? And I think there have been things we've nailed, and there have been things that are a little bit harder. And I think even certain departments, I think that for each department, we've actually been really good. So our delivery team, I think, is really brought on board well for the delivery team. I think our client success team is brought on really well for the client success team. The part that we're still figuring out, and I think we're not doing horribly, but it's an area of improvement for us, is how do we get the cross-pollination of our different teams? How do we get our sales team to work closely with our client success team? How do we get client success to work closely with our delivery team? We have some ambassadors, right? Like, so I get to work with a lot of people. We have a great UX researcher. Ease of use, that's another challenge. There's so many challenges in this space. Ease of use, because of the different data and technology literacy of, again, we help pre-K3 all the way through 12th grade. We're at K-12, but pre-K3 to 12th grade, we're dealing with all those students, all those families, all of those educators. And so it's like the tech literacy varies widely. And so this idea of, like, we have some ambassadors. We have this UX researcher who's incredible, helps us understand the needs of our users. She deals a lot with our sales team and with our client success team and with our customers. But does every developer, all of our amazing engineering folk, do they get that opportunity to talk with, even like the little stuff, hold open the door, see him in the hallway, have a happy hour? Like, we're trying, we do like trivia things, but that's been a challenge because in part that vision and mission, that clarity, and then communication, in part comes from that, like, that collaboration. You feel that pain point that the client success person is, or you feel that pain point of the user. And we've also, I think every company has tech debt. We're dealing with our tech debt, always
Yeah.
paying it down. It's like never ending, right? You're paying it forward and paying it backward. But it's like having our client success team feel the pain points of our delivery team. It's getting that. And we're doing an okay job, but it's like, that is where we're actually looking soon here to have an event, just a happy hour event, a little food, a little drink, just to get together with everybody. And that's been something where we really try to do that from the onboarding standpoint. And it
Yeah.
also comes from the hiring standpoint, which is where I was going originally with this, is we really try to hire people who see the importance of education technology for the greater whole. There are a lot of companies out there. There are incredible companies out there that are dealing with a variety of problems. And what makes Otus special, and what we want people to see what is great about Otus, is this idea of we're trying to solve a problem that's very unique. And a lot of people are passionate about it. And it becomes something that once you become passionate about it, it really helps. Okay, this is what it is. Like, I have a relationship to education. I remember when I was a kid, or I have a kid, or my niece, my nephew, or my neighbor. It's like, you see it. I'm going to be helping them. And it really creates a unifying force for our company. And it allows us to kind of march forward, even during some uncharted times that we faced.
It's interesting stuff, because I imagine that's the challenge everyone's having right now. But I like the idea of a happy hour there. That's something a lot of people could incorporate, I think. One question I'm really keen to ask, Chris, I'm conscious we're coming up to time, but with such a wealth of experience in education, it's obviously something a lot of SaaS founders won't have. So I just want to know how that has really informed or guided your approach to building a SaaS company there.
Yeah, so I think everybody's mindset, I think everybody's belief system, or like guiding principles that found you really kind of govern a lot. So I believe in, it's how I taught, it's how you do everything. I think that collaborative transparency, again, there's that word that was my mistake with the company, really has helped guide how we do this. Like, I work amazingly closely with our COO so that we have that collaboration, and we want that to be felt by everybody. And so it's really done a lot to structure how we do the organization. So we went through a big reorganization of our delivery team. We ended up adopting kind of this hybrid approach where we have 3 product teams. So we have, and they're really around the main features of Otus. And then each of those product teams have platform experts, back-end experts, UX experts, QA engineers, and test. And so I didn't know how to do that. I was able to learn from our CTO, who has experience building a company, has experience building a delivery team. We were able to listen and learn and iterate. And so I really think that the mindset of knowing what I know and knowing what I don't know has helped kind of create this culture at Otus where hopefully that's felt. And one of the things that I think became apparent here was, I'm also a teacher still. I still believe in teaching. So one of the things that our team feels is, I don't always say, and this can lead to some uncertainty, I don't always say, this is how it has to be. So we did this reorg, and it was this really amazing experience because I knew what the end vision was. So I could say, hey, this is what we want. We want these 3 product teams. We want these platform teams interspersed so that we have data experts working with back-end experts, working with front-end experts, working with UX, working with QA. We want all of them. We want this cohesive, collaborative team. And then we want these guilds, and we came up, what do we want to call them? All this like nomenclature that's in the tech world. We just call them a team because we just want to be a team. So we have a product team, we have a platform team, we have different departments at Otus, but they function as teams. And so we had this vision of what we wanted. And then it was saying, hey, empowering the amazing people at Otus, because I do very little. I get to come and talk to people on podcasts and share what Otus does, and I get to work and listen to districts. But I was able to say, hey, this is our goal. You figure out the best process and way to get there. And there was uncertainty. There were moments of challenge. There were moments of like, hey, are we doing this? It's like, are we going towards the goal? Are we getting better every day? And we were. And now we're like 5-6 months into it. Now there's a sense of ownership, autonomy. This isn't a process that was pushed down. Now they had the vision of where we wanted to go. They had the requirements of what needed to make sure was a part of it. But the definition, the shaping of the idea was really done by the collaborative group, right? Hey, how is this one of our product teams is assessment, right? The assessment team. How do you want to manage X, Y, and Z? They can do things a little differently than our LMS team, which is another of our product teams. So it's like, there is a little bit of autonomy, but it's like, hey, these 3 things we want to be consistent so that I can jump and know and not be unexpected. So it's like understanding that. So we have an entire prioritization process, a project process for once an idea comes in. Like we have this process. We have the guide rails in place, but anybody can write an idea, kind of like the movie. I have 4 kids, like this Pixar movie, like Ratatouille. Anyone can cook. Anybody can have an idea. We want to listen. We want to learn from anyone, and we want to then put it into this process. There'll be things where we get to shape the idea, talk about the idea, collaborate on the idea. And I think that's really shaped how Otus is as a company, because I hope people feel like they're able to learn. We have this idea of project leads. So there is a project and there's a lead. We have team leads, right? And those are some of our more experienced people, some people with great skill sets to be able to have that collaboration. But we empower our employees on the delivery team to also be a project lead. So they get that opportunity. How do I run a project? How do I do this? Because we want that growth experience for everybody. And I think it makes it an exciting place to work for, because we do have that growth. It has also kind of informed who likes to work here. We want that to be a really collaborative group. And I think we've really done well. But again, there's only room to improve, and there's a large future ahead of us. So we gotta get better every day.
Of course. Well, some really fascinating insights there, Chris. I think that brings us up to time, but thank you so much for joining us. It's been a pleasure to have you on. Thank you guys for tuning in, and we'll see you next time for Growing Tech Fast.